Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Columbus, Georgia. I'm Bill Harlan, your volunteer service leader. You've just heard our accompanist, Whit Locke. Our UU singers are still on pandemic hiatus, which is why we're coming to you via YouTube, pre-recorded this Sunday. We're trying to do our part to slow the spread of COVID-19. We had tentatively planned to resume in-person services here at Grace Fellowship Hall next Sunday. However, our board looked at the latest data this past week, as they had planned to do, and they've decided to push that reopening until Sunday, July 12th. So, meanwhile, we'll continue to offer our services on YouTube. Next Sunday, lay leader Rick Spradlin will conduct the service and talk to us about a rant on race. We'll also continue our Zoom activities via live video conference, so you can join our Wednesday night discussion group or our Friday lunch. You'll find more information about all these activities on our website, uucolumbusga.org, or you can email us at uufcga@gmail.com. This morning, I think we have an especially useful service given the chaos and uncertainty of the past week. So let's begin. We start our services by lighting the chalice, which symbolizes for us reason, tolerance, and freedom, and also respect, compassion, and love. Our fellowship here in West Georgia is comprised of a group of people with diverse views on religion, spirituality, and philosophy. We run the gamut from Christians, Jews, Muslims, we've had Hindus, we've had all manner of earth-centered religions, including paganism and Wiccans, and also quite a few agnostics and atheists. This morning, our presentation comes from one of our Buddhist members, Joanie Andras, who's actually a Buddhist nun, and she's going to talk to us about anxiety and fear as teachers, which this week I think is highly appropriate. Though we are diverse in our beliefs, we don't share a creed, Unitarian Universalists do share 7 principles, and it's our tradition to review them each Sunday, so let's do that right now. The first principle is the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Second, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Third, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. 4, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. 5, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process in our congregations and in society at large. 6, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. And 7, respect for the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part. Another tradition of our small fellowship is when we gather here at Grace Fellowship Hall, we take a moment to share personal joys and concerns. A little more difficult to do that during a pandemic, but I do have some. First of all, I want us all to have a good thought for our member Neil. His grandmother is recovering from a stroke. Neil and his grandmother live together, and they both kind of care for each other. Neil's okay. He's with family and friends now, and she's recovering, but I'll light a candle to send a good thought to them. We've also been lighting a candle every week for those who have been, especially those who have been really severely affected by the pandemic. That includes people who have lost loved ones, people who themselves are really sick, people who have lost jobs, people who have said whose businesses have been severely affected, and also for the caregivers who are keeping us all safe. And the third candle I want to light this morning is for all those people who are protesting peacefully under the banner of Black Lives Matter. And I also light this candle for all the law enforcement officers who are working hard to keep those protests safe. And I'd like to share a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King. "Returning hate for hate multiplies hate, adding deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." And we have another tradition in our fellowship which is really unique to us. It's a celebration of life toast, written by our fellowship's own Ed Wilson. It has no doctrinal significance. It's just a warm tradition. If you're not prepared for this, you can hit pause on your YouTube and you can either refill your coffee cup or get a glass of wine or whatever it is you'd like to drink and join us for the toast. I'm going to read the toast, and then you will have one line at the end, and that is, we drink this toast in celebration of life. Please raise your cups or glasses. We celebrate life with its beauty and its pain. We lift these cups in tribute to the achievements of human minds and hands, and in sensitivity to the frustrations of misfortune and heartache, not fixing blame or credit for the outcome of chance, sensing the risk, savoring the joy, sharing it all, knowing of the certainty of death, and remembering the value of each moment. We drink this toast of celebration to this time, to the future, to each other, to the throbbing of the earth and sea and sky with life. Together, we drink this toast in celebration of life. This morning's offering will now be given and received in the spirit of grateful fellowship, and it will be done in an unusual way. I can't come around and pass the plate, but I'll remind you that even though we're not meeting in person, we have continuing expenses and we're continuing our social action initiatives. So you can mail us your gift or offering to P.O. Box 698, Fortson, Georgia, 31808. Or you can sign on to PayPal and donate using our Gmail address. That's UUFCGA@gmail.com. So while you're looking for a stamp in an envelope or logging on to PayPal, Whit Locke will play something for us. I think it's Bach. Is that correct, Whit?
Yes, it is. It's the 11th of a set of 15 three-part inventions. You know, Bach is he's known as one of the most profound composers for religious music, but this, in fact, is not a religious piece of music. It's a secular piece, but I still find it quite moving in its form.
We look forward. Thank you, Whit. I think that was pretty sacred. Joanie Andras, who is going to speak to us today. What to say about Joanie? We share something. We were both born in Pittsburgh, but Joanie grew up in Florida. She married, had a couple boys, earned bachelor's and master's degrees in education. She taught school for 10 years. And in 1984, she became interested in meditation. And in 1993, she was awarded a doctorate in the psychology of meditation. And she's been teaching mindfulness since 1997, so it's been a while. Her travels have taken her around the United States, a couple times to India. At our fellowship, when there's not a pandemic, she teaches Buddhist studies and mindfulness and meditation. So, welcome to Joanie, and I want to mention that the idea for this presentation as a conversation rather than a straight presentation came out of a telephone talk that Joanie and I had maybe a week and a half ago, and just checking in really to see how we were doing. And Joanie confessed to me that she was having quite a time with fear and anxiety about everything that's going on in the world, really. And my first thought was, wait a minute, Joanie, you're supposed to be the enlightened one. How come you're having fear and anxiety? And she quickly set me straight on that. So, Joanie, do you want to expand a little bit about that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, the question, how is fear and anxiety our teacher? In what way do we use fear and anxiety as a teacher? So that's a little bit what I want to talk about right here. When this all first started 3 months ago, I felt like everything in the world had been shaken up. In 1989, I was in the earthquake in San Francisco, and this felt exactly like that. It felt like the ground was pulled out from under us, from all of us. And then I started, working with it, and all of the feelings and the emotions, and I realized that this was an incredible opportunity to work with what the Buddha had always taught. And what the Buddha has always taught is investigate the mind. Investigate the mind. So I turned my attention towards what practices that I could do that would alleviate or relieve this anxiety and this fear. So the other thing was that there was a tremendous amount of teaching happening online. Buddhist teachings, a lot of retreats are being offered via Zoom. And so I've been watching those, and one of the things that has been a theme through all of the teachers that are presenting Buddhist studies online, one of the themes is that we must not just focus on ourselves. We must understand, I don't like to use the word must, but open our hearts to how this is happening to everybody on the planet. So one of the things you and I talked about, Bill, was the interview that Tammy Simons did with Pema Chodron. And that was, she's a very prominent Buddhist teacher. And Tammy had asked her specifically, what's a practice that you could give to the group right now, right? And Pema Chodron mentioned this as a practice, and I thought this is really good because, and that's kind of what one of the things I'd like to share this morning, is that The important thing from a Buddhist perspective and understanding the mind, and it comes back, of course, to mindfulness practice, but to recognize what's going on. So you begin with recognizing, and then you investigate. And in Pema Chodron's instructions were, to allow yourself to feel the fear. And for some of us, that's really difficult. We don't want to do that. We want it to go away. We don't want to embrace it.
Yeah, I do have a question, and thank you, our videographer and director, Ron Usry. Just to let you know, we're giving him a couple beats as we conduct this, because we're trying to conduct this service in a really socially distant manner, because it was hard to hear us through our masks with the microphones. So thank you, Ron. But when you said investigate the fear, and I think Krista Tippett also did an interview with Pema Chodron along the same lines, and they talked a little bit about techniques you can use to really, rather than run from your fear,
Right.
dig deeper. And I'm wondering if you could talk for a minute about those techniques, about how to investigate your fear.
So, when we do the mindfulness practice, the instructions are to begin by, coming to a more centered place. What does that mean? So basically, you begin by feeling yourself in the chair, and you feel where your body is touching the chair. And you just take a couple of moments checking in, and then you can check in with your breath. Just actually investigate the sensation of the breath going in and out of the nostrils, or the rising and falling of the chest or the belly as you're breathing. And then if you're going to move your attention to the fear, where do you feel the fear in your body? Do you feel it in your chest, in your tummy, in the gut, maybe all three? Just allowing yourself to, number one, recognize that you're in fear. Take a few moments even to acknowledge that you have this fear. And then the investigation is this quality of, where is it in my body? It's also what thoughts are arising around this sensation of fear. What thoughts are arousing? What story am I telling myself? So that's the investigative process here. And I mean, this is like a snapshot because anytime we do these practices, they're much, much longer. You really take time.
I do have a question about that, Joanie, because I think what is coming up for me, and it was happening during the pandemic, and particularly during the time of the Black Lives Matter demonstrations and protests and all that chaos, is the primary emotion I'm feeling is all kinds of anger.
Yeah.
And I know I was inspired to get Pema's book and read it, and I know that anger and fear are closely linked, and I'm wondering if you could explore that idea for us for a couple minutes.
So anger, from the Buddhist teaching, is the most destructive, afflictive emotion. And I think it's been so clear to us to see it, if we watch what's happening with the riots, and I don't want to say riots, scratch that, with the peaceful protest and the attempt to remain peaceful. So there is this, it takes an incredible amount of discipline, I think, mental discipline, to stay centered and peaceful in a protest. And that's another aspect of what what all of these teachings that the Buddha gave about investigating and working with. So the thing is that you want, in working with anger, like one way of working with it is to apply is to not watch what's happening, which is part of what I do. I don't watch it. And the other thing is I look for the good in what's happening. So in the last week, two things absolutely wonderful happened. One was this sheriff in Lance, Michigan. You know, he took off his helmet. He said to the protesters, "I'm taking off my helmet. I'm putting down my baton, and I am marching with you." And you know, where did that mind state come for him? You know, where did that mind state? And then this story of the protesters at Lafayette Park, and this man opening his house to 70 people and feeding them pizza. And you know, I don't know how many of you heard that story. But there are just amazing and wonderful things happen. And for me, I focus on that.
There is a delicate balance. And there's what I'm getting from this, I should say, is that there's of course a place for anger. Witt played that UU hymn at the beginning. We are a gentle, angry people. So I don't think the practice means you let go of your energy on a subject, but that you incorporate that and own it, and recognize where that's happening in your body. I'd also like you to talk a little bit about, because Pema talks about this in her book, and Krista Tippett talked about it, about part 2 of this practice. Part 1 being, you know, kind of inhale your anger or inhale your fear,
Right.
and then what's the part 2 of this practice?
Okay, I wanted to say something a little bit more about anger, though, if I can get my thought back to that before I jump to this. The whole Buddhist path is about taming the mind. It is about understanding our thoughts and how they affect others. So that really ties in with what you're asking. Because our anger is going to affect others. And the Buddhist path, yes, investigate the mind, but it's about opening the heart. It's about awakening the heart. So what the teachers have been teaching now and emphasizing is what you're asking. What is this technique? What is the technique for opening the heart and for spreading out more compassion? And one of the techniques, and this is the one that you're referring to, that Pema Chodron talked about, was to breathe in the fear, to breathe it in, and then something alchemical happens in the body, and breathe out peace and calm. And I want to say, do this only to the best of your ability. My teachers always say to the best of your ability. If this is uncomfortable for you, certainly. I mean, Thich Nhat Hanh tells us to breathe in peace and breathe out calm. But this is a little different practice, okay? So, breathing in the fear and breathing out the peace and the calm. And Pema Chodron mentioned that when she first was experiencing the pandemic and recognizing what was happening, that she had to sit and do this practice like for about 30 minutes. That it took a long time for her to, and I was, like you said, I'm supposed to be, Pema Chodron has been doing this a lot longer than me. And, it's just, we're all human. We're all human, and we are all sharing this enormous burden of anxiety and fear. And one of the things that one of my sons said to me is that, and this is about perspective, okay? Can I just read something about?
Yes.
I'm digressing, but I really wanted to read this quote by the Dalai Lama. When the Dalai Lama was exiled from Tibet, people just thought it was astonishing that he was able to see the calamity of losing his country as an opportunity. And it was jaw-dropping to hear him reframe more positively the last half-century of exile. He had been able to see not only what he had lost, but also what he had gained. Wider contact and new relationships, less formality and more freedom to discover the world and learn from others. He concluded, so therefore, if you look from one angle, you feel, oh, how bad, how sad. But if you look from another angle at that same tragedy, that same event, you see that it gives me new opportunity. So he's talking about perspective, and that's the first pillar of joy, is perspective. So there's so much to talk about here, Bill. But I want to talk so much. So my son Jeffrey said to me, Mom, anything new and wonderful, any new birth will take some pain and suffering. And that's not exactly how he said it, but the way he said it, it helped me have a new perspective. It did. But what I really want to go back, I want to talk about a little bit what Erica said last week about learning being very tender. We're all learning something that's very tender. And she also said, if you can, put your hands on your heart and just be kind to ourselves. This is a tough time. Be kind to ourselves. So in some ways, Buddhist teaching is tough in a way. It's really tough. But at the same time, it's about opening the heart, loving kindness, compassion.
Joanie, you mentioned Erica. You're talking about Erica Bloodworth, who did a service for us last week, I believe, on yoga and breath. And Erica's husband, Stephen Bloodworth, the week before that, did a wonderful service about awareness of nature.
Yes.
And you can see those on our YouTube channel. We're going to keep those archived. Joanie, we're going to continue this at a future service. Joanie's a regular at our fellowship, and we're going to welcome her back again. Thank you so much for your thoughts this morning, and we hope to see you next week for a service with Rick Spradlin. For now, we extinguish the chalice here that it might glow gently in our hearts. May it light your path as you leave this place. With unity of spirit, we go our ways in universal fellowship until we meet again.